You're watching Global News Morning.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Well, if you're like me, you're just back from vacation and you know someone or yourself was caught up in the Air Canada strike impacting your trip or how you got home from that trip. So I thought it'd be nice to have Gabor Lukacs back on the show this morning. Gabor is the president of Air Passenger Rights and has some advice for people impacted by all this with Air Canada. The busiest man in air passenger rights is Gabor. Thanks for taking some time for us. How you doing?
Good morning. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, no problem. So I have friends who were with us on vacation in Quebec, Gabor. Their flight was canceled. They had to rent a car. They had to get a ferry back home to Newfoundland. They're now like kind of in limbo wondering what to do next. So what advice would you give to them and any other passengers?
Unfortunately, under the air passenger protection regulations, if you're traveling entirely within Canada, your only right in the event of a strike is a right to alternate transportation on the airline that you booked on, or if they are unable to book you within 48 hours to depart from the original departure time on their own or partner airlines, then they have to get you a seat on the next available flight of any airline. And that means they may have to buy you a ticket on Flair or Porter, whichever airline is out there at all. If it means using corporate credit card by Air Canada, then let it be. Air Canada has not been fulfilling that obligation to many passengers. So if a passenger purchased alternate flights on different airlines, the airline, Air Canada, will be on the hook for that under the law. If you were traveling internationally, then Air Canada will also be liable for your meals, accommodation, lost wages, and even any prepaid events that you missed as a result of the strike. However, if you were traveling entirely within Canada, then this right for alternate transportation is the only right that the APPR provides. And that's one of the major loopholes that the government put into the APPR that we have been protesting for the past several years about. In what Air Canada has been doing is, because of the 2 class actions that were launched against Air Canada and massive public outcry, they agreed publicly to reimburse passengers also for their out-of-pocket expenses, meals and accommodation, if they were traveling within Canada entirely. That kind of reimbursement is a goodwill gesture, unlike international travel. For domestic travel, at this time, reimbursing you for meals and accommodation is a goodwill. I would certainly send the receipts to Air Canada and ask them to reimburse for it. But ultimately, we have to remember that if you traveled entirely within Canada, then you are subject to the APPR, which is incredibly poor and should be revamped urgently.
Yeah, so they did fill in the online form. Now they're just waiting what the next steps would be. Is it small claims court? Is it to wait for these class action lawsuits? We're not sure if they're going to be certified or not. But what do other countries do in this circumstance, and how can Canada maybe get better when it comes to APPR?
Europe, which has the gold standard of passenger rights, has long ago recognized that when the airline's own employees go on strike, that is just business as usual. It is not extraordinary circumstances. So in those situations in Europe, the airline has to provide upfront meals, accommodation, and lump sum compensation just for the passenger's inconvenience on top of any other expenses they incur of £520 if you are flying back from, say, the UK, or up to 600 euros if you're flying from the European Union or other countries in the European Economic Area. Canada should adopt the European Union's gold standard. That's what we have been advocating for a long time, especially when it comes to the criteria for when you are eligible to lump sum compensation, when you're eligible for meals and accommodation. Just because the European system works, it has worked even for airlines like Ryanair, which is not exactly the high-class airline. It's a low-cost carrier, budget airline, and still they're able to remain profitable with those regulations.
So if people want to submit these online forms, Gabor, is there kind of a deadline on when they should do that? I assume soon as possible, but school's coming, you're just back from vacation, lots of things on your plate. What should you do?
I would submit it as soon as possible because you have to give Air Canada some time to review it and respond to it. Air Canada has been floating 6 weeks. I would say 30 days is what is reasonable. There is no legal deadline per se for submitting these type of claims, although typically you have to take your case to small claims court within 2 years. But I would really hope that in light of the public outrage, in light of the public attention that this issue has received, perhaps Air Canada is going to be far more cautious and not force passengers to have to take their cases to small claims court.
Yeah. If you could give Air Canada a grade on how they've handled all this, what grade would you give them?
I would say it's an F on how they handle the strike itself. They failed to rebook passengers in accordance with the law. They blatantly disregard the law. And in many cases, they've actually gave false information to the passengers, telling them that there were no flights available, while in fact passengers were able to find flights on competitor airlines that Air Canada was required by law to book.
All right. Thanks for the time. We know you're a busy guy, Gabor. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. You can find out so much more on Gabor's tips and advice on YouTube Air Passenger Rights and also on the website Air Passenger Rights as well.